Are you thinking about buying a house in 2025? You're in the right place. My name is Ben Quann. I'm associate broker here in Virginia. And today we're going to be going over the full process on how to buy your first house and also things you need to be thinking about, especially if you're buying here in Virginia, about kind of how the state lays out and just the different markets that we have here. So my goal is to make you confident when you're deciding to pull the trigger and buying your house, from the time that we start looking at houses until the time I give you the keys. Let's dive in. So we should probably break down Virginia in like the grand scheme, like how big it is, right? So we have a couple different, I've lived here my whole life, and here's how I kind of think about it. You have Northern Virginia, which pretty much starts in Stafford County, which is right north of me, and kind of goes up to DC. Now, the great thing about that is if you like city life, this is the place to be. There's a lot of folks up there. You have a lot of great things to do on the weekends, a lot of restaurants, a lot of little towns that you can check out. And we have a lot of great paying jobs up north, military bases. It's definitely the most populated area in Virginia. Working way down south a little bit, you have kind of my neck of the woods, which is Central Virginia. Now, technically, I'm on the northern end, being Fredericksburg, but kind of Richmond, which is our state capital, to Fredericksburg, out west to Lake Anna, that kind of area. It's mostly Central Virginia. And the great thing about Central Virginia, you kind of have a mix of everything. So if you want to go north, you can. If you want to go south, you easily can. East, you have the Chesapeake Bay. West, you have the mountains, which we're about to get into as well. A lot of folks that do live in this area do travel up north and commute for work because you have those high-paying jobs, but you have a lower cost of living down here in Central Virginia. So just think about Virginia, especially from Central to Northern Virginia. Every mile you go down south, the cost of living, housing pricing, the whole 9 yards does get lower. Moving a little bit further south in Central Virginia, you have kind of that Virginia Beach area, Norfolk, which kind of has a bunch of major rivers kind of go into it, plus the Chesapeake Bay, plus the Atlantic Ocean. So think if you want the beach, you do have a good city life down there as well, a lower cost of living, that would be the area that you'd want to be. We also have major naval base down there and just a cool area to visit. I don't like the beach all the time. I like the mountains as well. So I kind of want to be right in the middle. Now moving out west, we have the Appalachian Mountains that run right through our state. We have over 2 million acres of public land. So pretty much the whole west and southwest area has mountains, but also has farmland, kind of more rural out that way. Definitely a lower cost of living. We have some big cities like Lynchburg and Roanoke that are that way. Another cool area that I like to visit, but again, I stay more central, so I can do a little bit of everything. So all that being said, it really depends on what you're wanting in Virginia when you're thinking about moving here. Whether you want the city life, you want the beach, you want the mountains, you want kind of a little bit of everything. It just depends what you want. And every zone of Virginia is going to have these little hidden gems. It's an old state. It's got a lot of history. It's just a really cool place to visit and also live. All right, so depending on where you picked, the next big thing that you want to talk about is budgeting. That is going to be probably the biggest factor. Whenever a first-time home buyer calls me right off the bat, the first thing we want to do is get you with a loan officer and kind of go over some budgeting and kind of price points. So I hate to say it, and you know, I'm going to sound like a broken record here a little bit, but the first thing you really need to do is talk to a loan officer. He or she's going to go over kind of everything, all the loan products, the debt to income ratios, the credit ratings, and then essentially build you a budget from there. A couple things for you to think about before you decide to call loan officers. You always can pull your credit, which is good, but remember, housing credit's a tad bit different. It's on a smaller scale, so usually if you're on the higher end of one, you're going to still be on the higher end of the other. And then also, when you're looking at budget, now there's a couple different ways to think about it, but it can be as strict as 25% of your net take-home pay, which is going to be a little strict. But again, I never want you to be house poor. I do not want you to call me in a year or two and be like, hey, I can't even afford this house anymore. Something's going wrong. What do we do? So I always want you to live within your means, of course, and kind of budget on the more conservative end, because I can tell you, depending on the loan officer, they might pre-approve you for much higher than really where you want to be. So the great thing is when you're working with a local lender, and I do always recommend a local lender instead of like a national bank, is kind of give them your monthly budget that you want to stay, the monthly payment that you would like to stay in, and then they can kind of build everything around that. Another quick note on that, of course, before we look at houses, we would like to know your budget. Also, there are some loan programs here in Virginia, and I've talked on them in videos past about kind of more of the geographic location of some of these loans. We have a loan called a VHDA. We have a USDA program. Those are going to be more for first-time home buyers, but they are going to have kind of restrictions on where you can go. So again, if that's the kind of loan we're going for, we really need to have that up front. So before we look at houses, I'm always going to recommend talk to a loan officer. And of course, if you need a recommendation, just reach out to me. I'll hook you up. So whether you got pre-approved or not, you should also reach out to a real estate agent. Now, if you're in Virginia, I would hope you'd reach out to me. Finding a local real estate agent that knows the market, knows the area, knows the inventory in the area, and that has a lot of contacts. A lot of people overlook the contacts, but the contacts really do come in handy, you know, with fixing your house. Or, I mean, pretty much if there's anything house related at this point, I have a person that's going to be really good for you. So whether you pick me or someone else, just do a little research, right? Everybody starts somewhere, so I don't want to ever say don't pick the brand new agent, because they might be really good and lived here a long time and so on. But you know, do a little homework. Make sure you do a little vetting before you just call, say like Zillow or Realtor.com, and say, hey, I want to tour this house. Do a little research. Look at the reviews is always a big one. Look at their portfolio to see what kind of work they've done in the past. Make a choice from there. Now, when finding a house, a couple things that I look at, of course, we talked about it 100 times, but budget. We got to figure out what kind of price point we're going to be in. We also want to think about things like commute time. Depending on where you work, or you want to do a certain thing, I want to be within 5 minutes of my parents or something like that. We want to look at kind of commute and where you want to be located at. You also want to look at things like school districts and stuff like that. And I have some great resources for you that I can hand over so you can look at those kind of things and make your own decision on that. It's a great website that we like to use. It's greatschools.org, and you can check that website out and kind of, again, make your determining factor on the schools from there. And then future property value is always something that's in the back of your mind. I know some vacation spots right now are getting hit pretty hard because the demand's just not there with Airbnb and everything else. But the good news is with Central Virginia, Northern Virginia, is we have a really juggernaut of a job market in Northern Virginia with just all the federal jobs that are up there. So the good news is when the market turns, we seem to be affected the least. So we're one of the last kind of areas to get hit in a downturn, and we're also one of the first to jump back. So that's always a good thing too. Now, there are counties that might not bounce back as well, but for the most part, our values are pretty insulated. Now, we do have a great website if you want to search for homes. It's called midvahomes.com. And of course, we have a direct access to MLS. So pretty much anything from just north of Richmond up into DC, we have access to all that information. So if you guys would like to get set up on a custom portal or on our website, very easily can reach out to me and we'll get you knocked out. All right, and so just for a couple examples to kind of show Northern Virginia market versus say our market in Spotsylvania County. Spotsylvania County, our median sales price, $439 right now. Now that is up over the last couple years for sure. To put that in comparison, say Loudoun County, which is one of the richest counties in America, it's right in Northern Virginia, right off the western side of DC. Their average sales price, $671. A lot of realtors that work up there, their average sales price over $1 million. When we're looking at houses, whether you want to be in Northern Virginia or you want to be coming a little bit further south, you can get a lower cost of average the further you drive. So you also have that commute, so just keep that in mind. But we do have the hot lanes. We also have VRE. We have a lot of slugging options as well. So a lot of folks do it. I know at one point, almost 60% of our area left every morning to go up north and commute. All right, so we find the area, you find the house you want. Now we got to make an offer. Okay, so one thing we're going to pair the offer with is the pre-approval letter, which we need to have done prior to go looking at houses. Once we make the offer, of course, there's things like sales price, which is very offer dependent. So I don't ever really want to go into that until we figure it out. But the goal is to get you the best deal as possible and the timeline that works for you. There are a couple things to consider. You have closing costs, which you can't ask for a seller to pay, but then again on that offer situations, depending if we're going to be asking for closing costs. But one thing that stands true is we have to put an earnest money down, or EMD, and that's essentially like your skin in the game. So think about, they're taking a house off the market so no one else can buy it, but you're putting some money up as a collateral. Now there's a lot of contingencies that will keep you safe in this offer process, like a home inspection. If we don't like what we find out during the home inspection, you can back out, you get your EMD. But what it does do, if you decide to default on the offer, then your EMD can become liable. Again, very offer dependent, but it can become liable. So one thing that stands true is we do have to put EMD down. Now, a good rule of thumb is 1%. So when you go to close on this property, that can go towards your down payment or your closing cost. Or if you're getting a lot of that covered, if you're a VA buyer, sometimes you can even get your EMD back at closing, which is very nice. And then we have contingencies. Now, I never want you to waive contingencies. The housing market of 2021 and 2022, when it was insane, people were waiving contingencies left and right. Now, me and the team never really waived any contingencies, which I'm very proud of. It might have meant we've lost a few offers, don't get me wrong, but I've now gone sold houses that they didn't like the realtor that they bought the house with, and they didn't even know that they're on septic. Can you imagine that? And for people that don't know septic, like that's just, I mean, it can absolutely ruin your life if the septic's not working right. They didn't even know that they were on septic, and that just, again, kind of goes back to picking the right agent. And also being informed. This is why you're watching this video, because you want to know what to really pay attention to. So, couple contingencies that you can always add into it. Now, if you're getting a loan, you're going to have an appraisal contingency and a financing contingency. Those are going to be your longest running contingencies to make sure you can get that loan. And then the bank also values the property for what you put the offer in. And then you have your financing contingency where, again, if you lose your job, like say 3 days before closing and you can't get financing, that would keep you safe there as well. So on day one, you're going to be putting that EMD down. The next one that you're going to come up with is usually say like the home inspection. Now it's up to you if you want to do a home inspection. I'm always going to recommend it. Talk to your realtor. They'll probably have a couple home inspectors that they like using, but it's ultimately up to you if you want to do one and who you want to use. A home inspection is going to be about a 10-day period. So somewhere from day 1 to day 10, you're going to be doing that home inspection. That's a 2 or 3 hour process to kind of deep dive on that house to make sure everything's in working order. There could be a negotiation period on the back end. Say if that roof is leaking or the HVAC's not working, you could ask the seller to fix it, or you can bounce out of the contract. The next one comes to mind, especially in this rural area, it's going to be your septic and well. Not every house is going to be on septic and well. You could have city water and sewer. So that's going to be very house dependent. But if you have a septic and well, those are usually about 21-day periods. Septic companies seem to be kind of backed up, but that's one that I highly recommend you do. If it's on septic and well, you got to get a septic inspection. I'm sorry. It's just like one of those things. I've seen houses that have failed and have $60,000 worth of repairs need to be done. It's not a thing that you want to mess with. So always get the septic and well. And again, it's about a 21-day period. Realtor is going to be usually setting those up. Again, it's up to you on who you want to use. But usually your realtor is going to kind of set that all up after you pick who you want to use, and then we'll have the septic inspection. Now, whether you want to be there or not, it's up to you. But I always recommend it's good, especially for a first-time home buyer. The well is going to kind of do the same thing. There's going to be usually a bacteria test done to make sure that there's no bacteria in that water or E. coli, but also drawing it down, making sure the whole system's working in order and that well's filling back up. The last two contingencies are more financing related, and those are going to be appraisal and your financing. Appraisal is just making sure that the bank is loaning the right amount of money. It's getting a third-party evaluation on the property, essentially. And that's usually like a 21-day period too. And also the financing contingency, which is going to save you in the case of you can't get the loan. Now, whether it be like you lost your job or the loan officer didn't do their job proper. And then the last one's the financing contingency, which is going to be a longer period, usually 20 to 30 days, something like that, to ensure you're going to get that loan. Say in the case you lost your job last minute, and I've had it happen, and the guy couldn't get the loan anymore, and that would keep you safe in that event, and you can get your EMD back. But you definitely want to make sure that's in there. Now, there are some other ones like termite and home sale contingencies and stuff that we don't need to really touch on. But again, everybody's situation is a little bit different. Those are the big ones that I think everybody should kind of have, and then you kind of figure out from there what you want to do. So assuming everything went right there, and you've gone through this 30-day period, because that's about as long as it's going to take. On average, about 30 days. It could be 45. It could be a little bit less. 21, we've closed them in before. It's going to be coming down to closing. So now you're going to be turning on utilities in your name and getting insurance and everything else. And so the closing process, we're going to be with the title company. We have an attorney on staff. They'll kind of go through all the loan paperwork and kind of lay out that whole situation, and then you get the keys. It's fast and furious, but ultimately 30 days you guys get a house, and then now you guys become a homeowner. Now, one of the things my teams offer is a transaction coordinator that's going to kind of be helping you through the process as well, making sure we put those utilities in on time, making sure we have all the utilities and the different internet providers that they have in that area, that kind of stuff. Also, our title company is great. Again, we have an attorney on staff that kind of makes sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And it's really nice working with them. And of course, I'll be there the whole way. So if you have any questions, my phone's on 24/7 for my clients. I'm always there for you guys as well. But on that day 30, you get the keys. When the buyer closes in Virginia, technically the title's not transferred until the day after when it records on the title, or when it records down at the clerk's office, but you do get the keys and you take possession of that house that day. So we can close at 9 o'clock and you can be sleeping in there that night. So I know that all sounds like a lot of work and I threw a lot at you, but buying a house in Virginia is not that bad, especially if you build your right team, meaning the lender, the title companies, the inspection folks, and of course your real estate agent kind of tying it in all together. If you found this guide kind of helpful, hit that like and subscribe. It'd mean the world to me. And of course, if you have any questions, just leave them down in the comments below. I'll definitely get back to you. As I'm wrapping this thing up, I would say I'd love to help you if you guys decide to move to Virginia. Now, I work Central Virginia mostly. This is the territory that I know the best, but I do have folks in Northern Virginia, Southern Virginia, East and West. So no matter where in Virginia, if you reach out to me, I'll get you hooked up with the right people. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.